Neptune for hibernation. Ah!
Who are you people?
Ready for a new dose of SpongeBob animation errors? Get ready because this starts right now. Number 1. Crusty plate. Have you ever tried to clean a spot from a plate, but it's so resistant that you've had to use a beam machine to do it? Well, in this classic from the 4th season of the show, SpongeBob had to use all his array of techniques to clean a small spot that he found in one of the Krusty Krab's plates. And like people say, desperate times require desperate measures. To solve this, SpongeBob used many tools, like a water beam cannon called the Spotmaster 6000, a chainsaw, and a jackhammer. He even destroyed the whole Krusty Krab by trying to clean the plate. But let's look at some curious scenes from the episode. Now, we know why that spot was so resistant and refused to leave the plate, right? Or maybe this small detail didn't catch your attention. In case you didn't find anything strange during this set of scenes, we recommend re-watching them with your eyes set on where that small spot is. But don't worry, because if you still haven't found the error, we're going to tell you. When SpongeBob starts his quest to get rid of that spot, it is located at the bottom part of the plate. But after some tries and many magnificent plans after, when SpongeBob is trying to hit the plate with a sledgehammer, the spot is on the top part of the plate instead. Maybe we're witnessing an all-powerful spot. We told you that SpongeBob destroyed the Krusty Krab in order to clean that small spot, right? Well, this scene might not only show the mayhem that our protagonist created, but it also brings a cool animation error with itself. If you look carefully at the floor of the now destroyed Krusty Krab, there's a big hole in the middle of the wooden floor. But if you look at the moment in which both SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs are running in circles chasing each other, the hole on the ground has disappeared. Well, this means that animators put a great effort on fixing the mess that SpongeBob created on this one. Number 2. The Donut of Shame. Would you sacrifice your friendship for a donut? Patrick nearly did that in this episode. We know that Patrick loves some good old treats, especially if chocolate is involved in the equation, but to what point? Because due to a very good-looking donut, he nearly lost his friendship with SpongeBob in this episode. Patrick was in a serious hurry to eat the donut, and he even came back to his house running full speed. But isn't something strange happening in this scene? Well, when we see Patrick running back to his house to eat and enjoy that magical donut alone, he doesn't seem to be wearing any shorts. He's running with only his underwear on. But that changes at the same exact moment that he puts a foot in his house, because when Patrick is shown to be sitting at the table ready to eat the donut, he is indeed wearing more clothes. This is really something strange, right? Let's continue with the episode. Patrick's dreams might have changed SpongeBob's appearance for a moment in this scene. This took us some tries to find, but do you see what happens to SpongeBob's nose when he steps on the donut that was hidden under the rug? In case you haven't, we're here to solve this mystery for you. If you look at SpongeBob's nose at that exact moment, you're able to see that his nose is painted white for a brief frame. Such a funny error to find. Number 3, Slumber Party. Ready to ruin some slumber parties? Pearl may have wanted to organize one cool slumber party, but you know, when SpongeBob's around, things may not go as planned. Let's look at some funny scenes from this episode.
You want to stay here at my house?
Seems like somebody forgot that there was a power outage in Bikini Bottom while making this episode. You may have missed it, but this scene has something curious going on because after Pearl's big neon sign of "No Boys Allowed" causes a power outage in all of Bikini Bottom, a small transition happens, and suddenly we see SpongeBob's house. What's the curious detail about this? Well, SpongeBob's house has its lights on. This is so strange since the city shouldn't have electricity.
Big surprise! Dad was too cheap to buy real pizza!
What's taking SpongeBob so long? I'm getting tired of looking through his stuff.
SpongeBob's house is the victim of so many errors in this episode. The figure of SpongeBob's famous pineapple is known all across the world, but in this episode it is missing a key feature. Do you know what it is? Well, throughout this episode we get many shots of the outside of SpongeBob's house, and in neither of them the house has a chimney. Someone decided that SpongeBob should remodel his house in this one. Number 4, pre-hibernation week. Well, somebody needed some action before hibernating. Sandy might be the most energetic and sporty character in all of the SpongeBob series, but poor SpongeBob, he can't keep with this uber-energetic squirrel. Anyway, this episode left us with some really funny moments to watch, so what are we waiting for?
Where are you? You up or later?
I can explain.
SpongeBob?
Sandy might be strong enough to lift a whole house by herself, but isn't she missing something here? Well, this is not the first time that we're able to highlight this error on different episodes from the show, but when Sandy uses her Herculean strength to lift that house from the floor, she is missing her tail. As we said, this is not the first time that she loses her tail during the course of the series, but still a funny error nonetheless.
I found SquareBob.
That's just a cereal box. Besides, he's yellow.
Yeah, here he is. Hey, can I go home now?
Oh, look! He's up in the sky!
Sandy just scored another error on this episode. Well, much like Sandy missing her tail, what happens in this scene might sound familiar to you if you've been keeping up with our videos. But in case you haven't, we will give you a brief explanation about this error. When Sandy appears to be angrily shouting at the fish named Charlie, her neck changes its color to a more light brownish instead of her usual darker tone, similar to the one on her cheeks. Such cool errors for a fast-paced episode. Number 5, Sandy, SpongeBob, and the Worm. What would you do if a gigantic Alaskan bullworm attacked your city? Our heroes had to fight against this terrific creature during this episode from the second season of the show. But as we know, being such an iconic episode doesn't exclude you from having some animation mistakes. So let's take a look at some of the scenes we chose for you on this one.
Let's just forget about it and go home. I've got ice cream with nuts. Sandy, this is your pappy speaking, and I forbid you to go after this worm. Y'all come back here, young lady.
If watching SpongeBob getting dressed as Sandy's father wasn't strange enough, this scene brought something even weirder than that. Just take a quick look. Have you discovered it? Well, in case you didn't, when Sandy is walking away from SpongeBob, we see that our protagonist points at her with one of his fingers. This is really special because for some frames after he does that, his finger loses a part of its skin. Poor SpongeBob. As if dealing with a monstrous creature wasn't enough, he's also losing some body parts.
What?
SpongeBob's house got eaten by the worm in this episode, but did the animators forget about how they designed SpongeBob's house? Well, this may not be an animator error itself, but the inside of SpongeBob's house, or at least how it's portrayed in this episode, raises many questions. Let's explain to you why. First, the kitchen, library, and the exercise room are completely missing, and also, the house only has 2 floors when many other times it is shown to have 3 of them. Please, someone remember how they made the protagonists' houses. We might think that SpongeBob has a nearly perfect life living in the depths of Bikini Bottom, but what happens when things don't go as planned? Get ready to find it, because here are 7 animation errors that you can find in SpongeBob SquarePants. Number 1, Christmas. Who doesn't like a good old Christmas special? SpongeBob decided to spread a lot of Christmas love and joy during this episode, but like we always say, everything that shines is not always going to be gold. So let's take a look at this part. I'm pretty sure that you haven't seen this one. When SpongeBob is running to Sandy's house to show her some of his new karate moves, there's a small frame where SpongeBob's helmet separates from his head. He's lucky that it's only for a moment because he needs it to breathe inside Sandy's house. But let's move on with the episode, shall we?
SpongeBob, I ripped my paper. Could I have another one?
Sure, buddy. Here you go. Okie dokie, Squidward.
SpongeBob?
Did you take a look at SpongeBob's feet? When he's talking to Squidward and Patrick on the table, his shoes are transparent for a few frames. Such a funny error to discover in this Christmas special. Number 2, the secret box. What would you do if your best friend had a secret box that nobody knows what's inside it? Will you try to discover it? Enter here, the secret box. It's in this episode where SpongeBob tries to discover what is inside Patrick's secret box. But of course, it comes with its fair share of errors during this process. We know that the trio of Squidward, Patrick, and SpongeBob are the most famous neighbors of Bikini Bottom, right? When SpongeBob tries to infiltrate Patrick's house at night, Squidward's house is nowhere to be seen. We know that Squidward isn't the happiest person around, but they erased his whole existence this time. But let's take another look at a very small error that we were also able to find. Here, when SpongeBob is arguing with Patrick, he has double the freckles he usually does. Well, this is a small error, but an error nonetheless.
Is the most secrety secret in all of secretdom, and I am its sole witness. It's a heavy burden, SpongeBob, but nobody must know the mystery of the box. Nobody!
Number 3, salty sponge. Seems like SpongeBob wanted to change restaurants for a while. In this episode, SpongeBob starts working at the Salty Spittoon instead of working in the Krusty Krab. But let's see what this change of scenery brings up. Right in the beginning of the episode, we see that the mailbox outside of Bob's house is missing. But if we look just a couple moments later, the mailbox is right where it should be. But this is not the only thing that is missing in this episode. At the start of this adventure, after SpongeBob goes to the Krusty Krab and cries over it being closed, the camera starts to zoom away from the restaurant and the chum bucket is nowhere to be seen. Many things disappeared in this episode. Number 4, Friendiversary. Friendship is a very important aspect of everyone's lives, right? Well, for sure, we know that Squidward and SpongeBob are the best of friends. Let's watch this clip of the episode Friendiversary.
It's all here in my Squidward memory book.
What?
Here's us at camp. Here's when I moved in right next door. Oh, and here's when I got Employee of the Month instead of you again.
Did you catch the error? There's a moment at the start of the episode where, while SpongeBob is talking to Squidward, his neck disconnects with his body. What a strange way to celebrate their friendship. Well, this is not the only error we've found in the episode. Let's take a look at this. Squidward's and Bob's friendship goes as far as sharing the same inside of their houses. For sure, friendship is a pretty thing. Number 5. Hot Crossed Nuts. Krabby Patties might be the Krusty Krab's stellar dish, but in the episode Hot Crossed Nuts, Sandy creates a snack that drives people even crazier than the Krabby Patties. Let's check it out. Well, if you looked carefully enough when Sandy and SpongeBob were giving this fantastic meal to Squidward, suddenly SpongeBob's arms turned into Squidward's arm. This is weird because Squidward is the one who should be outside. Maybe dinner is not the only thing that changes in this episode. Number 6, Sir Urchin and Snail Fail. We might think of SpongeBob SquarePants as a legendary show for us, but have you ever thought about what SpongeBob watches on TV? Let's take a look at Season 13's Sir Urchin and Snail Fail.
It's no joke, Patrick. Our favorite comedy team just broke up on live TV.
And now that we've introduced you to this fantastic show inside SpongeBob's world, let's take a look at the scene of the episode. If you look closely at Patrick's shorts at the beginning of the scene, the super characteristic flowers that we can usually see in his pants disappear for a second while he's sitting on the sofa. Maybe it was just too fast that you need a second look, but for sure, that was a funny animation error. Number 7, a mini Squidward? Squidward brought to life one of the most famous moments in SpongeBob's history, with Squidward doing his particular dance. But this is not the only thing we found while revisiting this episode. Let's take a look. In this episode, SpongeBob decides to strengthen his friendship with Squidward by making a mini version of himself. This mini squid will be the protagonist of many funny adventures during this episode, because he is able to do everything that Squidward does, but even better. But even though this mini Squidward looks super cool, he is accompanied by some animation errors. Let's check this iconic moment from the episode. While this demonstration of skill by mini Squidward is impressive, I hope that you looked at SpongeBob because we found something funny in his attire. When SpongeBob is holding his new little friend in the air while he's playing the clarinet, part of his t-shirt is yellow, much like his real skin. We know that wardrobe errors are a common theme of SpongeBob's animation errors, but like you can see, even the best episodes have their own flaws. Anyway, let's enjoy the episode. Well, grab some popcorn, take something to drink, and get comfortable, cause here are 8 cool and funny goofs in SpongeBob SquarePants. Number 1, Reef Blower. Reef Blower is one of the most interesting episodes in SpongeBob because, unlike others, this episode has no dialogue at all. But hey, we are in search of errors, so maybe dialogue isn't the only thing that's missing right now. Let's start with one that might be fast, but still an error after all. When SpongeBob grabs the machine he uses to blow and clean streets, we see a strange thing happening to his house. Usually, Bob's house has a window on the first floor, but, well, maybe animators forgot to place it because suddenly, when Bob is cleaning the street, no window seems to be found. Strange, right? Well, it's even stranger when we jump a couple of moments after and the window is back to the first floor where it usually is. Let us continue because this is not the only thing we're going to find in this episode. At the start of this adventure, Squidward seemed to love flowers because he had one right right in front of the door of his house. Or at least that is what animators wanted us to believe. If we jump forward in the episode when SpongeBob drains all the water into his blowing machine, we see that Squidward is sadly sitting in the door of his house. But where's the flower? Of course, it's magically disappeared. Reef Blower is such a cool and unique episode, but as we told you before, dialogue is not the only thing missing here. Number 2, he loses his pants? SpongeBob might have done lots of things during his career as a TV star, but like with all things in life, his career has had some highs and lows. Let's take a look at what happens in the episode Ripped Pants, because this is a very funny one to analyze. Here in this episode, SpongeBob jokes about ripping his pants after trying to lift some weights with Larry the Lobster and Sandy. This goes to the point that SpongeBob becomes famous all around Bikini Bottom for this, and he even does a song about how this happened. So let's jump to the point where he performs his newly created song because, oh man, here is a big error. When we see SpongeBob singing, we see him make some moves that provoked his pants to rip the first time. But this time, instead of ripping his pants, we see that his underwear is the one that ends up broken. Well, when the camera zooms out from Bob, if you look carefully at his attire, something seems a bit odd, right? He's no longer wearing his underwear, and he's back to wearing his full swimsuit again. Maybe the animators thought that there was enough embarrassment for SpongeBob to suffer and decided to give him back his clothes. Even with this error, the episode is really cool, and we recommend you watch it. Number 3, no criminals allowed. Knock Knock Who's There might be one of the craziest episodes from SpongeBob's newer seasons, so let's see what happens here and what we can find in this cool adventure. In this episode, SpongeBob watches Mr. Krabs' house while he's away and goes to extreme measures to prevent burglary. These measures include things like locking the windows, always keeping a weapon on his person, and not stepping foot into his bedroom. All these measures will later backfire on Krabs because, as he told Bob, nobody can enter his house and SpongeBob won't let Krabs enter himself. If we take a closer look at Krabs' house, boy, we have a great goof right here. At the start of the episode, when we see Krabs leaving his home, the door does not have a mail slot. This might not be very strange at first, right? This all changes because when we see that SpongeBob has ordered a pizza for dinner, he's able to eat it through a newly appeared mail slot. Even if SpongeBob didn't let anyone enter Krabs' house, he for sure created ways for him to have dinner and enjoy a great pizza. Number 4, a magic clarinet. We know that Squidward is a really talented musician, but did we know he had magical instruments? Or at least ones that can change color? That is exactly what happens in Season 9's Squid Plus One. This episode shows us Squidward receiving an invitation to a gallery opening and scrambles to find a friend to take with him, but only SpongeBob is intent on going with him. Searching for a solution, Squidward even tries to befriend Larry the Lobster, which will lead us to what we are looking for. What will be the juicy error this time? Well, Squidward may not have the best social abilities and ways to interact with others, and while he's mocking Larry for being addicted to his protein shakes and needing them to survive, something funny happens to Squidward's clarinet. Suddenly, the clarinet has become golden. This might be a reference to Squidward's talent as a musician, or maybe it's just a cool little error that animators forgot to change. Anyways, it looks way cooler in that flashy golden tone. Number 5, changing landscapes. Frankendoodle and Doodlebob were one of the highlights of the second season of the show. In this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick are playing rock, paper, scissors using bubbles when the pencil suddenly lands in between them. SpongeBob and Patrick, at first terrified of the large artifact, start to doodle with it. They soon come to discover that whatever they draw with the pencil is brought to life, and thus dub it the Magic Pencil. SpongeBob soon draws Doodlebob, a sketch version of himself himself intended to fool Squidward. However, Doodlebob beats Squidward up and steals the magic pencil, going off to wreak havoc across the seascape. SpongeBob eventually turns the tide of battle and uses the pencil's eraser to rub out Doodlebob. But with all this drawing madness, for sure we were able to find a small error of our own, one that doesn't come from SpongeBob paintings at least. When SpongeBob is fighting Doodlebob inside his house, we see that the photos that are hanged up in the wall of the living room are completely empty, which is rare for a photo. But if we jump a couple of moments later, we see that they've turned into photos of Patrick, the outside of the house, and other things related to SpongeBob. How curious this is. Well, this might be a consequence of SpongeBob drawings, or maybe it was something that the animators forgot to paint, unlike Bob does during this episode. Number 6, Squidward misses his neck. In every SpongeBob season, there is a tendency for characters to lose some of their body parts. Let's take a look at this episode from Season 6, Sun Bleached. In this episode, SpongeBob accidentally gets sun bleached when he and Patrick tan to join Craig Mamelton's party. Patrick converts his house into a tanning machine, able to give them the minimum tan in just 15 seconds. Patrick goes first and gets a perfect tan. But during SpongeBob's turn, Patrick forgets to watch over SpongeBob and leaves him in for 2 hours while he goes off with a group of girls. After Patrick finally lets him out, SpongeBob has ended up with a white, sun-bleached tan that dehydrates his skin. Some moments after, Squidward starts mocking SpongeBob because his skin has dried up and how funny he looks. Then when Squidward shouts, "You're sun-bleached," in SpongeBob's face, his neck goes missing for a brief moment. This might be really hard to catch at first because it is only a brief and fast moment, but if you look close enough, it's really cool to catch it. SpongeBob might have lost part of his skin, but Squidward lost even more in this episode. Number 7, Flying Legs. If our last error was about Squidward losing his neck, think about this. What if he loses his legs? Walhalla is an episode about SpongeBob discovering a crazed castaway living in his walls. When SpongeBob arrives home, he sees Gary stuck in the walls of the house. To get into the walls, SpongeBob opens the door on a picture of his parents' house and goes inside. The door closes, leaving him trapped behind the walls. Inside the walls, SpongeBob sees Gary's shadow. A crazed, bearded old man snarls at him, scaring him. However, Gary is safe and the man gives him a treat. He introduces himself as Wally C., a man who has lived inside the walls for years. At the Krusty Krab, SpongeBob prepares a giant Krabby Patty. He gives it to Wally, whose hand is sticking out from the floorboard. Wally then travels into the cash register, asking Squidward for mustard. Horrified, Squidward runs out of the restaurant screaming as SpongeBob and Wally laugh, only for Wally to stop and comment that he still hates SpongeBob's laugh. So let's rewind back to this moment at the Krusty Krab when Bob has prepared a patty for Wally. Again, Squidward is the usual suspect of this error too. When Wally scares him, Squidward jumps super scared and his legs start to move super fast. Maybe the speed of his legs was so fast that they even separated from their body for a brief moment and they moved behind the wooden boat of the Krusty Krab. What a funny moment to discover, even if it's super fast and it's hard to find and watch.
How's it looking out there, boy?
Like 2 more satisfied regulars, Mr. K.
I ain't interested in the same old regulars, SpongeBob, so I took out an ad in the Bikini Bottom Examiner to bring in some new customers.
Hello, SpongeBob fans! Are you bored and don't know what to do during your weekend? Well, if that's the case, today we have a really special video for you. Grab some popcorn and get comfortable because we will show you some goofs and animation errors that you can find in SpongeBob SquarePants. Number 1, The Krabby Chronicle. SpongeBob for sure is a great chef, but what about being a writer? Well, in this episode, Mr. Krabs had our protagonist working not only as Krusty Krab's best hamburger maker, he also turned SpongeBob into a great writer for his own newspaper. Well, even if SpongeBob is learning a new job, we found some scenes that had some mistakes in them. Let's take a look at them quickly.
And he appears to be waiting for the bus. This is the kind of breaking story my readers are waiting for. Patrick Star, I'm Scoop SquarePants from the Krabby Chronicle. Everyone's wondering, what bus are you taking today?
SpongeBob! What's the meaning of this?
Meaning of what, Mr. Krabs?
Local resident watches poll? No one's gonna pay to read this malarkey?
This mistake passed right before our eyes when we were watching the episode. But hey, starting a new job is a really hard task to complete. So let's look at this scene where SpongeBob takes some pictures of Patrick for Mr. Krabs' newly created newspaper. When SpongeBob takes those pictures of Patrick, our favorite starfish doesn't seem to be in his happiest mood, but a couple of moments after, when Krabs is arguing with SpongeBob about how he did his job and how he wrote the newspaper, the photos of Patrick that appear show him with a big smile. Well, this is funny because we didn't remember that Patrick wasn't as happy the first time SpongeBob took photos of him, but for sure it is something that animators also forgot. But some more scenes from the episode also caught our attention.
Plankton's chum made of your chums? The chum bucket serves your friends in more ways than one? What? Who's to blame for this? Who?
Plankton is usually a pretty evil mastermind, but this time he tried to deceive all of us. When Bikini Bottom's resident villain reads the fake article about the bad service that he offers in the chum bucket, the article reads, "Plankton's chum are made of your chums." But when Plankton reads it, he adds a line that doesn't really appear in the newspaper. He says the chum bucket serves your friends in more ways than one. Well, this may be a strategy to make the article more dramatic, or maybe someone forgot about that line being shown in the newspaper. Number 2, the good Krabby name. Let's continue with more episodes of SpongeBob having multiple funny professions. Well, this episode might have SpongeBob working to promote the Krusty Krab around the whole town of Bikini Bottom. But that doesn't exclude itself from having some funny and questionable scenes that we can talk about.
It's eat or be eaten. The giant patty has eaten my buddy!
Relax, Patrick, it's me. This is just a costume.
Cough him up, you monster!
Patrick is for sure a very visceral starfish, but we had to have our eyes really open to catch the mistake that happens during this scene. Were you able to catch it? Well, when Patrick is fighting SpongeBob while our protagonist is wearing the Krusty Krab costume, SpongeBob drops some flyers to the ground. A couple of moments after, when the camera zooms out of the two friends fighting each other, the flyers are nowhere to be found. Maybe Patrick is so strong that he made them disappear.
Time, where have you been? I'm out of here.
Fire up the grill, laddie, and get ready for customers. And Patrick, buy something or get out.
Oh, boy.
Squidward was really angry in this episode due to the way that Mr. Krabs handled things, but his anger left us with a cool mistake that even we weren't able to catch at first. Well, when Squidward exits the Krusty Krab, he manifests his discomfort by throwing his employee hat onto the ground. Such a bad employee, isn't he? Fast forward a couple of scenes later, and when everybody is ready to enter the Krusty Krab right before Mr. Krabs chooses his last customer, and poof, the hat is nowhere to be found. It truly is a magical hat. Number 3, boating buddies. Seems like SpongeBob doesn't know when he's crossing the line with his friends, especially when things involve Squidward. This episode has Squidward going to the same boating school as SpongeBob in order to learn how to properly drive a boat. This sounds like a wacky adventure from our two favorite protagonists, but this adventure also had its fair share of errors. So let's look at them together.
I have it, Squidward. You gave it to me to leave you alone yesterday. Squidward, you can have the $5 back. Mr. Krabs says
I
that...
don't care what Mr. Krabs says.
SpongeBob's clothing is the main suspect for many of the animation errors that we can find in the show, But did you catch this one? Well, after Squidward offers $5 to SpongeBob in exchange for leaving him alone and being able to enjoy the morning, SpongeBob gets scared for a second. It is that precise moment where SpongeBob's belt changes from black to white. What a cool error to find in this episode.
Everything I know, and then we can...
We won't be doing anything because there is no we. Understand?
Quiet in the front, please.
Remember that we told you that SpongeBob's clothing is the main suspect when searching for some animation errors? Well, this scene had a cool one to find regarding his belt again. When everybody is sitting in the boating class, you can see that SpongeBob's side belt disappears. We hope that from now on, everybody pays more attention to our protagonist's clothing. Number 4, sun bleached. Who's ready to get sun bleached? Well, this might sound like your typical beach, summer-oriented episode, but having a great time during summer doesn't exclude you from having some animation errors, right? Let's check them out.
I used Patrick's tanning booth, and I stayed under too long.
Oh, this is too precious. You're sun bleached.
This is a really hard one, but have you found it? Well, when Squidward is shouting at SpongeBob about how bad his dry state looks, Squidward's neck disappears for a couple of frames. This might be a fast one, but for sure is another proof of Squidward needing to control his anger. Let's move on to another scene. Somebody should revise how people write their signs in Bikini Bottom. This spelling error might have been overlooked by many of us, but if you look closely at the Bikini Bottom Summer Shindig, the word shindig is misspelled because even if the sign had to use the word shindig, it is written as shinding. Hard one to catch. Number 5, Nautical Novice. He might not be the best driver around, but SpongeBob impressed Mrs. Puff with his knowledge of boating history on this one. Well, even if SpongeBob's knowledge surprised us all on this one, we found some cool and funny scenes to show you. Let's take a look.
It's working! She's noticing my vast knowledge. I can now taste the sweet, sweet lamination of a fresh boating license.
After demonstrating his knowledge about boating history, SpongeBob says the next phrase to Mrs. Puff. I can now taste the sweet, sweet lamination of a fresh boating license. Well, if you looked at SpongeBob at that same moment, his teeth turn yellow for a small frame. Bragging about something is never a cool thing to do.
Oh, my gravy! He even knows the hearty laugh. He has been doing his homework.
Ha ha ha!
We saved the best for last, and this might be the hardest error to catch in today's video. Did you notice anything strange happening to SpongeBob's tongue? Well, if you look at our hero's tongue when he is maniacally laughing, there is a small moment where his tongue disjoints from his mouth and it's seen flying through the air. Many parts of SpongeBob's body changed during this episode. Love it or hate it, SpongeBob SquarePants is one of the most iconic cartoon shows ever created. But do you know it has some animation errors? Well, get ready because today we are here to show you a cool selection of some animation errors that you can find in SpongeBob SquarePants. Number 1. Scavenger Pants. Once more, someone underrated SpongeBob's talent to do something. This time, to be a scavenger. Well, SpongeBob and Patrick are experts when it comes to annoying Squidward and letting him without any moment of peace. In this episode, they again try to disturb Squidward's peace, but our favorite squid comes up with a great plan, sending them into a dangerous and nearly impossible to complete scavenger hunt. Let's look at some funny and curious moments from the episode. Well, this one is funny enough, but it can also catch you by surprise. Here we see that both SpongeBob and Patrick are reacting to the frightening Badlands that Squidward sent them to. Our protagonists get so scared that they miss some parts of their body. Do you know what we mean? Well, in case you don't, in the scene in which both Patrick and SpongeBob are reacting to that awful sight, they start to scream, and it is in that exact moment where SpongeBob's teeth disappear, and the same happens to Patrick's eyelashes. For sure, they got really scared. Let's keep watching for some more cool scenes. Someone please call our geography experts because we found a big mistake here. Were you also able to find it? In case you haven't, let's take a look at what caught our attention. When Squidward starts to spin the globe to find some cool destinations, there are some countries which have disappeared from the face of the earth. Some of them include Japan, New Zealand, and even Sri Lanka. But not only this, because you might think that this happens because the globe is shown to be far away, but some moments after, we get a small close-up of that same globe, and even more countries have gone away. This episode was packed with surprises. Number 2, teachers' pests. Well, seems like Mr. Krabs and Plankton's rivalry also expands outside of the fast food sector. In this magnificent episode from the 11th season of the show, both Mr. Krabs and Plankton dive into a fun and strange adventure. They start to go to boating school together. Just watch this episode, because this is a really funny one. The scene of Mrs. Puff biting the three is a really iconic scene from the series, but were you able to find something strange in his table? Well, it took us a couple of times to find that something was missing there. During the first couple of scenes, we can see that both Krabs and Plankton give some fruit to Mrs. Puff to gain her confidence. This changes some scenes later because when the apple tree grows out of Mrs. Puff's mouth, the grapefruit and the squashed apple on her desk have magically disappeared. What a strange thing to adorn such a weird moment. But this is not the only thing we have found here. SpongeBob experts sure know that our squared protagonist has his face covered with little freckles, right? Well, this one was also hard for us to find, but we hope that being such clever watchers as you are, you found the mistake here. If you look closely at Mrs. Puff's rear mirror in her car, there's a scene where we're able to see SpongeBob reflected on that same mirror, but he has no freckles on his face. This drastically changes in every other shot in which SpongeBob is shown from up close, so we decided to include this as a small but forgettable detail that maybe animators ignored. Number 3, Drive Happy. Ready for another driving episode? Well, we know that SpongeBob isn't the best driver around, but this new job, he doesn't even need to have a driving license. This crazy outcome left us with an episode filled with funny and cool moments, so let's check them out. Who doesn't like to put some cool decorations on a flamboyant new car? Well, for sure, SpongeBob is not the only one who does this, much like in this episode. But that decoration didn't last long. Did you notice that? It was hard for us to find, but when revisiting the episode, we saw that during this scene, SpongeBob puts a mermaid-like bobble-headed toy in his car. But even if that toy looked super cool, we see that in the next scenes, that same toy isn't on the car anymore. SpongeBob's newest car for sure had an attitude, but who doesn't like a change in style? Isn't there something missing here? Well, in case you don't know, Squidward and SpongeBob's houses are next to each other. But here, SpongeBob's house has a special thing right next to it, a super cool driveway. Did you catch the error here? That same driveway occupies the place of another special site in Bikini Bottom. If you guessed that the place that is missing was Squidward's house, you were right. Looks like somebody lost his house in this episode. Number 4, Smooth Jazz at Bikini Bottom. Any jazz lovers out there? Here is an episode for you. SpongeBob and Squidward may have lost their tickets to Kelpie G's concert, but we know that nothing is impossible for our squared hero. So let's check what we've found here.
This goes out to all those sad sacks without a ticket to tonight's concert. We're giving away the last 2 tickets to one lucky caller.
Oh, the dream is still alive!
Isn't someone missing his hat here? Well, you may not have noticed this, but when this scene starts, Squidward has his Krusty Krab employee hat right on his head. But when we move to the next scene and we see both him and SpongeBob talking on the phones, the hat has magically disappeared. This is not the first time that we see clothes missing, but this is for sure a funny one. But this doesn't end up here. This whole episode revolves around SpongeBob and Squidward finding backstage passes so they could enter Kelpie's concert after missing their original passes. With that information, don't you see anything strange here? Well, SpongeBob and Squidward might have fought hard to get theirs, but when the shot shows every other squid that has attended the concert, nobody has a single pass. This is sad for Squidward because of how much this concert meant to him and how much effort he put into gaining those passes back. Poor Squidward, he can't have a single break. Number 5, Planet of the Jellyfishes. The title of this episode might remind you of a very famous film, but don't think that it shares anything in common with this weird SpongeBob episode. Well, if you're ready to hear one really scary story, this episode might be the perfect one for you to watch because, oh, it's a very horrifying one. In this frightening SpongeBob adventure, an evil jellyfish invades Bikini Bottom and starts to kidnap every single inhabitant of Bikini Bottom. Why would he do that? Because he wants to clone them. Ready to see how? Let's look at some scenes.
A new breed, huh? I think I'll keep this one as a pet. Whoa!
Yes, I too have caught many jellyfish.
They say that there's nothing like anything that's original. And well, we found something strange in this copy of Patrick. In case you don't, when this strange clone of Patrick appears, he has no belly button. Even though this detail has been used in many other media to differentiate people from aliens, we don't know if this is the case, so we decided to put this strange detail in the video for you to see. Also, it is funny because depending on the scene that you're watching, the belly button appears and disappears without any logic.
You two stay out of trouble. Bye.
Well, Patrick isn't the only one who changes during this episode. Did you see what happens to Gary's shell in this scene? Well, in case you didn't, when Gary is about to be cloned by the alien jellyfish, the spots on his shell change their color for some frames. This is not the only time that this happens in the series, but we chose the one in this episode because it fits the creepy criteria. Well, there you have it, SpongeBob fans. Here are some animation errors that you can find in SpongeBob SquarePants. If you liked the content, please subscribe to our channel so we can provide you with even funnier videos. Bye-bye!